I'm J.G. Michael, and this is Parallax Views.
Hey there, Parallax Views listeners. On this edition of the program, we're going to be taking a break from talking current events and politics to discuss the Academy Awards. Yes, it's that season again, the Oscar season. We're going to be talking about all the Oscar buzz with film analyst Albert Lanier, one of my most frequent guests on this program. Listeners seem to really love Al's takes on various matters. We've talked to him about politics, we've talked to him about true crime, and lately we've been talking to him about movies when he comes on the show. We're going to get into the nature of the Oscars and why Al doesn't get mad about the Oscars and what films are snubbed and what films get the award. We'll talk about all of that. We'll talk about how the Oscars aren't entirely about art. We'll talk about the Oscars as an institution. We'll talk about how Roger Ebert dealt with the Oscars. And we'll go through all the Best Picture nominees for the 98th Annual Academy Awards, which you can watch on ABC Sunday, March 15th. Before we get to the conversation, I'd like to remind you that it is you, the listener, along with my one humble sponsor, Mike Swanson of Wall Street Window, that make this show possible. So please, if you can, support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Parallax Views. One more time, that's patreon.com/Parallax Views. And if you can, check out wallstreetwindow.com, Mike Swanson's newsletter. He provides the best financial and trading news. I've actually had listeners make a return on investment due to Mike's trading tips. So once again, head on over to wallstreetwindow.com, where you can also, if you sign up for the newsletter right now, get a copy of Mike's ebook, The Twofold Formula, the single best trading pattern I've ever used. Again, that's wallstreetwindow.com. Thanks to Mike Swanson for sponsoring the program. And with that being said, let's get right to the conversation with Albert Lanier. Welcome back to Parallax Views. One of my most frequent guests. He's a favorite on this show. I'm talking about the one and only Albert Lanier. We've talked about everything together from politics to true crime, and he's settled in lately talking about film, which he has a background in. What do you call it again that you do? You don't say that you're a film critic. You say that you're a film
analyst.
Right.
I was a film critic and I was a film reviewer for 8 years, from 2002 to 2010. But I don't review new movies, so I can't fully say that I'm a film critic anymore, or film reviewer, even though I do one of my two newsletters, which is Retro Review. I do technically review movies, but they're movies from the past. So I'm no longer a film critic or film reviewer. Film analyst makes sense, although it sounds like, I used to live in LA. It sounds like I'm some kind of therapist for Hollywood movie stars or something. I'm not, but I have no degree in psychology. But then again,
and your website is allanier.substack.com, the Final Cut blog, right?
Final Cut newsletter. Yeah. Okay. It's a newsletter technically, and so that's one of the two. Final Cut. I also have a podcast, which I'm technically here to help promote, which is Final Cut, the podcast, the Final Cut podcast. And that's a promotional vehicle for my newsletter. That's how I first start into podcasting. So I have a couple podcasts. So yeah, Final Cut, the podcast I just launched the 3rd season of that. I did something it's different. I did a episode about the Oscars, and normally my podcast is all about my newsletter. So I was doing something a little different. So it's episode 21, titled "The Year of Filming Dangerously." So, and I'm thinking of doing an Oscar choice show, like Siskel and Ebert. And people remember Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert and their show. They used to do if we pick the Oscars or we pick the winners. And I was looking through those recently on YouTube, and it got me inspired to possibly do I think it's going to be called If I Chose the Oscars. So I've already picked the winners. It's only going to be several categories. I'm not quite sure when I'm going to do that. Maybe close to March 15th, Sunday, March 15th, which is when the Oscars are going to be telecast on ABC. And so I have to decide when I'm going to do that. Maybe closer to the Oscars. We'll see.
Now, every year around this time, the debates start about the Oscar picks and whatnot. And even I see a lot of, and I don't know how true this was decades ago, but I see a lot of people that, like, how do I put it? Question even the Oscars as an institution. You know, a lot of people that are, oh, they just pick the most pretentious movies and et cetera, et cetera. Even though a lot of Oscar movies aren't necessarily my cup of tea, I'm more interested in like European cinema.
Right.
I've begun pushing back on the sort of anti-Oscar sentiment, especially in lieu of what we have now with regards to the sort of dominance of Marvel Cinematic Universe type movies. I do think there is a place for the Oscars. And I was wondering, that's my take, but what is your take on the Oscars as an institution? Because there is divide about the Oscars as an institution. Some people see it as outdated, as having problems. Other people will say that it needs to be defended. Where do you stand?
It's interesting because I was thinking about this. As I mentioned, I used to be a film reviewer. And of course, I paid attention to the Oscars like I paid attention to the Golden Globes and some other film award shows. What I do now that I've come back to writing about film is what I call trend track or trend spot in regards to movies, which is what I'm currently doing now to a certain extent. Since this is my media tour for the award season, Oscars, first time I've ever done it, which is interesting. In regards to the Oscars, the point I would make here, and I may make on other shows, is very simple. The Oscars have basically become the de facto global film awards. They didn't used to be. They used to be basically the American Film Industry Awards, basically centering around the majors, meaning the studios. You know, Universal, 20th Century Fox, Paramount, Disney, MGM when it really produced movies. The major 20th century, you know, all these studios, all these majors. And what it's become, especially in the last decade and more, especially in the 21st century, has become essentially an international and global award. And you see it reflected not only in the nominations this year, but also in past years, in a few past years. When you're looking at movies from other countries that are now getting substantial nominations, let's look at 2025. This year, you've got The Secret Agent from Brazil, a film I consider one of the best of the year, if not the best of the year. You have Sentimental Value, a film from Scandinavia. You've got It Was Just an Accident, which was filmed in Iran, but of course is produced and presented by France, another country, I believe. You have other films that have competed with other awards. I think one of the best films of the year, which got snubbed by the Oscars this year, was No Other Choice, Park Chan-wook's, I think, one of his best films. So that was the thing. You know, I hate sort of having like opinions about the Oscars because I feel I have a more pragmatic view of the Oscars, which is that the Oscars are number one about marketing and advertising. If a film wins an Oscar, it's then used to market and to promote and to advertise that film. and also the financial aspect. The average person understands this to an extent, that the Oscars can create a degree of financial, there's a degree of financial incentivization in winning an Oscar, because it can create a boost financially for a film. That can happen. And so I have a rather pragmatic view of the Oscars. I don't have a view of Oscars as purely a film award, because I understand that that's what the general public would glean from it or gain from it, or that's how it's presented. To me, it's not purely a film award. It's a way, it's an industry honor, and it's important to films in the industry. No matter now whether they're in the US or whether they're in Europe, Asia, South America, etc. And you said something about, you know, the Marvel films, superhero films. One of the things that I find about the Oscars is, I think wisely, they kind of put their finger to the wind and they saw the way things were blowing in terms of cinema. And they decided to open up the Oscars. So now you have a movie like It's Just an Accident with Jafar Panahi, who was in prison in Iran. He's still technically, I would say, a bit of an outlaw figure to some extent in Iran. But you have a film like that that isn't just nominated for International Feature, which was the changeover. It used to be Best Foreign Film. But it's also nominated for Screenplay. And you also have a film like The Secret Agent, which isn't just nominated in the International Feature category, but also Best Picture, Best Actor. So what you're seeing with movies nowadays with the Oscars is you're seeing more of a global influence, and the film and that award has become much more of an international film award, not a domestic American award. And so, I mean, even I think, I hate to bring up his name, I'll just say the current president complained that Parasite won an Oscar for Best Picture, which was a breakthrough. It's one of the breakthrough moments for the Oscars. And it just helps, buttress my point about the internationalization of the Oscars. If you look at the other awards that are out there, especially the Golden Globes, the point I make about the Golden Globes, for example, is the Golden Globes are really fundamentally about Hollywood. Even though they are administered or put on by the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, which is a group of individuals from various countries, mostly Europe, but various countries. So even though those awards are voted on by people from other countries in the world, who of course happen to live in Southern California, because that's, I think, per the bylaws, unless they've changed. The Golden Globes are more about Hollywood than, quote, foreign film or for anything foreign. They center around celebrity and personality. And that's a big difference in terms of even how the awards are showcased. When something goes wrong at the Oscars, it's a problem. Just remember what happened with La La Land and Moonlight. I'm sure some people listening to this will remember that debacle, right? You know, that didn't have anything to do with the Academy. It had to do with the accountants. And they're, giving the wrong envelope. So when something goes wrong at the Oscars, they're really unable to pivot. But when you look at the Golden Globes, that seems to be an award based on things going wrong, or things going off kilter, or things coming out of the blue. Think about this. I see all these videos about Ricky Gervais when he was the host, right? And they say, oh, he's exposing Hollywood and he's talking about Hollywood. Here's what I would like to tell these people. Do you really think that they had Ricky Gervais host for more than 1 year? He did it for at least 3 or 4 years. I can't remember the exact amount. Do you think they're going to allow him as a host if Ricky Gervais is really screwing up the works? He's really messing things up. No. That's the way the Golden Globes operate. they kind of thrive on the unexpected and the out of left field and the completely surprised. They seem to love that sort of thing, or at least it's structured in a way as an awards to allow for that. And they're built on personality, and they're built on celebrity. Hollywood, the Oscars do not depend on celebrity. This people may hold me to task for this. The Oscars are not based on celebrity. They like celebrities just fine, but they're fundamentally about films. So I don't know if that's something you expected me to get into in regard to discussing the awards, but it's a point that I'm trying to make here on my media tour in regards to awards season, how very different those awards are and what the Oscars have become. And so I think what some people want with the Oscars is maybe what for the Oscars to reflect box office. And that doesn't work because a lot of the movies coming out of Hollywood, what's happened with the studio system and the majors is you no longer have the middle budget or small budget or what I call middle brow films, to use a term from literature. You no longer have the middle brow movies. You no longer have the modest budgeted dramas and even comedies. Comedies are like, I hate to say comedies have gone extinct, but to some extent, there are less comedies produced by these major studios over the past few years than there were in the past. I divide it between the major studios and what I call the new major studios, like Netflix. Netflix is what I call the new major, right? Like Apple Plus, Amazon, or whatever. So if you look at what's occurred with the awards, it's very interesting. I think what's taken place, in my view, in my kind of taxonomy of the awards and my dissection of the awards, I think the Oscars are a global film award, and they don't rely on celebrity. They have celebrities, got that red carpet, but fundamentally, the Oscars are not beholden to celebrity. They just need celebrities to be on the show and give out awards. Whereas the Golden Globes are about moments. They thrive on celebrities. They need them. Think about the Golden Globes. What if people have watched them? What do you remember from that? You remember what some actor said when they got their award, not just speech, but also what the host might have said, or what might have gone wrong, or what seemed to kind of go out of control slightly. That's probably what you remember. The Oscars don't work that way. They don't want things out of control. They're equipped for a lot of contingencies. From my reading and my examination of the Oscars, they are prepared for a lot of things to go wrong. And so when the rare things go wrong, it's probably stuff they didn't prepare for.
Okay. So I want to go back. So you don't want to leave out the financial element of it. There is a sort of marketing aspect to the Oscars.
Right. As I had brought out.
No, but I want to talk a little bit more about that because I think there's some people that will say it's an institution sort of defending us from just, only looking at these Marvel movies. So does it serve two functions, or do people place too much emphasis on the, it's an institution that defends filmic art?
Well, that's tricky when you say that the Oscars are about art. I think the Academy may consider themselves, you have to understand the Academy is an educational and informational institution because it's not, the awards are one part of it, right? They have the Margaret Herrick Library, which has a lot of props and materials and production items and related to films or from movies. You've got the Academy Theater, which runs screenings, not only of what become Oscar-nominated films, but other kinds of films. You have the Student Academy Awards, awards given for students at film schools. I believe you went to film school, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yes.
So you're probably familiar with the Student Academy Awards. So the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences is fundamentally an educational and, I would say, informational institution, nonprofit, right? So is there a degree of art involved in what they esteem or what they place a value on? Perhaps. I think they're more about the industry itself, more about the art form of movies, as opposed to pure art in movies. I think that's the difference. Because you can't look at every Oscar winner. There are Oscar winners that are clearly Oscar-winning films that are clearly entertaining. They're not artistic. They're not transcendent. They're not transplendent. They're amusing and entertaining. So not everything is art when it comes to the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. I'm sure they don't want it explained that way, but that's the way that that's the reality that I see. It's about the art form. It's not purely about art in movies, because they're different kinds of movies.
How important then is it, the sort of, like I said, that marketing aspect? I mean, it is ultimately a spectacle. It's like last year's Oscars where they did the big James Bond retrospective. There is like an entertainment aspect to it and a desire to get, people to watch.
Right. Well, the show itself is the entertainment, right? That's 3 hours. It's, well, I wouldn't say it's 3 hours of entertainment. It's probably at best 30 minutes of entertainment and 2.5 hours of 2.5 hours of process, right? Of various types of awards, a process, right? The process of awarding different areas of cinema, of different areas of film. The process, when you're talking about best sound, when you're talking about best cinematography, when you're talking about art direction, and this year a new category, casting. Thank goodness they finally got an award for casting. To me, that's a scandal that the Oscars haven't given out an award for casting all these years. It's crazy to me that they haven't, but it's just my point of view.
Why do you feel that way about it?
I think it's ridiculous. The Emmys give awards for casting.
Right.
I mean, when you look at, I think it's Marion Doherty, who was the groundbreaking casting director. I can't fathom in my mind why you wouldn't recognize the work of these people that are highly involved in the casting process, in getting directors to look at actors, in getting directors to look at actresses, getting and having an influence. I can't understand why they were neglected for so long. I just don't. I really just don't. I'm glad they're now finally being recognized in the film world and with the Oscars. And by the Oscars.
Now, with regards, I cut you off. You were going to talk about the process element of.
Well, yes, because you have to look at all the craft Oscars. You have to look at all the industrial Oscars. You have to look at all the other elements, right? Remember that this is an award show, and that all the awards, and this may be hard for some people to accept, but they should accept it. All the awards and all the award winners are worthy of respect. Because of this award strives to reflect and award excellence in whatever category. And so therefore, it's, yes, there's an entertainment component to the Oscars, but the Oscars is not pure entertainment. After all, it is an award show. And it's an award ceremony, really. So it's both. It's an award ceremony that is, of course, televised, so it is also an award show. Right. So for me, when I look at the Oscars, or my point about the Oscars is that it isn't pure spectacle all the time. You have a bit of spectacle here, a little bit of spectacle there, little bit of wit here, but most of it is, this is not going to sound good, but a conveyor belt of statuettes being given out to worthy selected awardees.
Now, I don't know where you want to go next, but I was curious what you think of this year's Oscars. I mean, I think we have a record 16 nominations for the movie Sinners. One battle after another follows that with about 13 nods for different nominations. What do you make of some of the big contenders?
It's interesting to me that Sinners got 16 nominations because it's a film that really hasn't won a lot of awards in the awards circuit thus far. I think it got an award at the Golden Globes, but really didn't win too many awards. So it's interesting that it's 16 nominations for Sinners. Sinners is, in my view, a hybrid film. It's a cultural, folklorish drama embedded within a horror movie. And on a technical level, I think it is a substantial achievement as a horror movie and also as a drama. So I think that's being recognized. All the technical categories, all the craft tech categories, all of that. I think that's being justly recognized with all these nominations. But I don't think, even though Sinners has been successful, and even though Sinners has been, not just successful at the box office, but critically successful, I don't really think this movie is going to be appreciated until years from now. And I said this on a show I was being interviewed on yesterday. I said, I wouldn't be surprised if this movie is studied in film schools. I would not be surprised. I actually don't think Sinners is the best horror movie of the year, pure horror movie of the year. I think one of the best pure horror movies of the year was Weapons. That's a very assured debut. I think Sinners is something that kind of supplants the horror genre. It uses the vampire subgenre of horror. And as a vampire movie, it's perfectly fine. But I'm interested in other elements in Sinners. So when I saw it, I went, I like the music. I like the whole folklore aspect, the whole cultural matrix of the film. Right from the start with Clarksdale, Mississippi, 1932. I'm like, wait a minute, isn't that where the blues was created, or the so-called home base of the blues? I hope I have that correct. But I was looking at that, I went, this is interesting. But I think Weapons is actually a more interesting horror movie, pure horror movie, than Sinners. Sinners is a different kind of achievement. And I was saying this on another show yesterday, unfortunately, Weapons got one nomination, I believe, but it's interesting because I think it's a really good film, and I'm interested in what Zach Cregger will do next after seeing this sort of multiple story characters.
Did you see his previous film?
No,
Barbarian,
I'm afraid not.
Was?
Oh, right, he did. That's right. I did hear he did a movie before. That's right, Barbarian. No, but
Okay.
This movie, I look at Weapons, I go, this is a first-rate horror movie. It's a first-rate film. So I really like Weapons. I like the way it's written. I like the framing of the film. Basically,
There's sort of that Rashomon effect in it.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Rashomon because I think fundamentally, Rashomon, I believe, was based on, I think, In a Grove. This is the short story In a Grove, because I read the short story. I also saw, obviously, Kurosawa's film. It's interesting you use Rashomon here, but what I believe that Weapons is a movie that is a dark fairy tale. It's basically the Pied Piper of Hamelin in the 21st century. So I'm interested in seeing what this director is going to do next. But Sinners, to me, is a different kind of achievement. I don't think it's a pure horror movie. It's a hybrid film. And so as a vampire movie, it's okay, but I'm more attracted to the other elements. Unfortunately, I don't like to predict what's going to win Oscars and what isn't. I don't think that Sinners will win Best Picture. I think it may win a number of tech awards, but I don't, and craft awards. I don't think it's going to win Best Picture. I have to be brutally honest. Again, I don't really think this movie is creative.
Since you mentioned weapons, though, what do you think about Amy Madigan's chances for Best Supporting Actress?
I'm glad she got nominated. I'm very happy about that. I think it's unlikely she'll win, but you never know. Could be a surprise. Those supporting categories are usually surprises. I'd be very happy if she won, but I don't think it's probably going to happen.
Well, horror movies tend to have a harder time at the Oscars, too.
But it's interesting this year because you have Sinners, which is a horror movie. I think it's a hybrid horror movie. You have Weapons with one nomination, and you have Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, which is gothic horror. So horror surprisingly has a very good showing at this year's Oscars. I spoke about that in an interview yesterday. So I won't go into too much about that, but it's done very well this year. So it's a very good year for horror. Horror fans should be very pleased.
Now, in terms of what do you think are some of the films that if people haven't watched from this year's nominations that you would recommend people go out and see?
Well, One Battle After Another. I don't know how they're going to deal with that. I'll be honest. It probably won't be everyone's cup of tea, but you got to say Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another.
Just because now you say cup of tea because of how politically charged it is, or?
Yeah, I think it's become a lightning rod politically, which makes sense, right? I mean, that's a movie. When I saw One Battle After Another, that's straight because it's based on Pynchon's Pynchon's novel Vineland, and I like Pynchon, and I guess Paul Thomas Anderson does too because he did Inherent Vice, which I think was also based on Pynchon, and I like that movie Inherent Vice. But I think it's a movie that kind of, for me, it's a movie that takes the 60s revolutionary fervor, actual left-wing revolutionaries and revolutionary groups, and it transmutes it and allows it to metastasize and grow within this sort of fictional context, right? It's a future, but not necessarily future, but it's an alternative America. It's a fictional America. So, but it hits, I mean, you look at that movie, One Battle After Another, you look at, they're going into the immigration camps and the issue of immigration. That's colliding with what's happening with ICE, what's happening with immigration control and reform, if you could call it. I'd see very little reform. That's what's happening now. So it's a movie that's really kind of hitting nerves and hitting a nerve. And it didn't do well financially. I think it's another movie that'll probably be appreciated, I think, later on. Even though it was critically acclaimed and it's up for, 13 Oscars, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's another movie. I think both Sinners and One Battle After Another are movies that are going to be appreciated. Even though they were critically acclaimed, they're going to be appreciated years from now. I'm convinced. But it's another impressive. I don't think that One Battle After Another is better than There Will Be Blood. I think that's really Paul Thomas Anderson's masterpiece. But this is a very strong film. Very strong film. So One Battle After Another. The movie that I would tell people to see, there are all a bunch of movies, but is The Secret Agent.
I keep hearing a lot of buzz about that. You're not the first person to tell me I need to see that.
I think it's the best film of the year. It's my choice. If I had to choose the best film of the year, even though I'm not a critic anymore or a reviewer, that's the best film of the year. So it's one of those. That's why I'm a little happy with the Oscars this year. I look at it, I can't get that mad. And I don't normally care about what gets nominated and what doesn't. I care a little, actually, because I've come back to writing about film. But when I wasn't the reviewer, it didn't bother me or didn't care about it, what got nominated, what did it. But I was happy The Secret Agent got nominated for Best Picture and Best Actor with Wagner Moura. And I'm a very strong advocate for this movie. I'll just come out and say it. I'm a very strong advocate for this movie. I think it's simply an outstanding film. And set in 1977 during the dictatorship, the ongoing dictatorship in Brazil. I think, especially the opening of this movie, the problem with Secret Agent is I can't talk that much about because it might ruin the experience for people. So, I mean, it has a kind of arresting opening.
I've had people tell me they actually prefer it to One Battle After Another, and that it's also very political, like One Battle After Another was.
Well, they're both political films. One Battle After Another and Secret Agent are both political films. The Secret Agent, I mean, after all, it's set during dictatorship in Brazil. And, the director and the star, I believe, were, the Bolsonaro when he was president. I mean, president of Brazil, was no fan of those two. He's no fan of the director, no fan of the actor. So, it's
I don't want to mispronounce their names, but it's Pierre Fijo, and that's the director, and Wagner Moura is the actor. Yeah.
Right. And so, you're right that they're both political movies, right? And it's interesting that these two political movies, I think it was a very good year in movies. I'll just say that 2025 was a very good year. It was a terrible year for this country and for this economy. It was a very good year for movies. Very strong globally. Very strong globally. And I think it's reflected to a certain extent. So The Secret Agent, I highly recommend. I highly recommend One Battle After Another. Joaquin Trier's Sentimental Value is another film. That's also got a number of Oscar nominations. That's another movie that I recommend. With Stellan Skarsgård. And I think Elle Fanning's in that film, and Renata Reinsva. And again, one of the reasons I'm so happy with the Oscars this year is the movies that I thought were great. And of course, Janar Panahi's It's Just an Accident. So, which is truly one of the year's best movies. The only movie that didn't get nominations that I was a little irritated with was No Other Choice by Park Chan-wook. But that irritated me a bit. But I'm generally happy. The movies that I consider outstanding this year those are the ones I recommend to people. It's Just an Accident, or It's Just an Accident, Sentimental Value, One Battle After Another, and The Secret Agent. I'd also recommend Hamnet, which also has a number of nominations. And when I was doing my Final Cut podcast episode recently, I was talking about Hamnet, and I have to be honest, I didn't want to see it. I looked at this and went, oh, another Shakespeare in Love, but done as a drama. Pass. I don't want to see that. And I saw it, and I think Chloe Zhao did such a nice job with her DP of framing and filming the woods and the forests, of showing life in, I guess it would have been Elizabethan England, kind of rural life. The feel of this movie is really good, and the images to me are interesting. It's really when this movie gets to the theater, and I'm looking at it, I'm going, this is good, this is good, this is good. When it gets to the theater, that's when everything changes. And even though it's predictable to me, because I've seen a billion movies, and I know what's happening, it's still powerful. And Jessie Buckley's performance is simply outstanding. It's a great performance. I'm looking at this movie, I'm going, they understand what works here dramatically, and they're going with it. And it's terrific. So I do recommend Hamnet. And I can't talk too much about it again. I can't. There's another movie I'm like,
There's one you didn't mention that I'm really interested in seeing. The one about Broadway musicals, Blue Moon, Linklatter's Blue Moon. Ethan Hawke is up for the best actor for that one.
I'm glad that Ethan Hawke got an Oscar nomination, but I think that's another movie. I think it's about Rodgers and Hammerstein, if I'm not mistaken.
No, it's about Elizabeth Weiland and Lawrence Hart. Lawrence Hart. It's about the leading up to the opening night of Oklahoma.
Right. And well, I mean, I like that sort of music. So that's one thing. The other thing about Linklater is I think this year he did Nouvelle Vague, which is about the making of, I believe, Breathless, Godard's Breathless. And from a film perspective, I'm glad he made that film. I'm really glad he made that film because I think Breathless was that's a hugely important movement. The Nouvelle Vague and the French New Wave. It's a very important. I don't know if there are too many narrative fiction films about the Nouvelle Vague or French New Wave. So I'm glad he made that movie. That didn't get any nominations, but I'm glad he made it. So I'm glad you brought up Blue Moon. I'm glad you brought that up.
Now, were there any others that you think are worth? Well, the other one I have to see is Del Toro's Frankenstein. I'm assuming you've seen that one.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's an interesting take on Frankenstein. It's technically and visually quite sumptuous. And I think the thing about Frankenstein that I like, without giving it away since you haven't seen it, is the contrast. Not contrast per se, you could say contrast, but it's really the kind of duality in that film. For one, I would say that it's probably the first Frankenstein adaptation where the creature, I don't say monster, creature is close to human and rendered as really close to human. And I think it's Jacob Elordi. His performance, I think, is excellent. He's worthy of an Oscar nomination. It's very good work here. And it's an interesting meditation on fathers and sons. To the contrast is Victor Frankenstein's relationship with his father, and of course, Victor's relationship, if you could call it, with his creature. And so the thing that I would say about Del Toro's Frankenstein is the closest that I've seen to the creature being human in a Frankenstein adaptation. Generally, they are monsters. Generally, they're inhuman. But this is the closest to humanity I've seen portrayed in regards to this creature. And it's a great-looking movie.
That's exciting to hear because I've always had the thing is, I've always wanted to see a Frankenstein movie where you can say the creature is sympathetic in a lot of the other movies, but I remember when I first read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, I was like, I hate Victor so much. To me, Victor is the villain for me.
Well, I don't want to give. It's weird talking about this because I can't. I'll just say go with that impulse. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Oh, and the other big one that everyone keeps telling me is Timothy Chalamet in Marty Supreme.
I had let out. I think people who like that movie probably are not don't want to hear me say this, but that movie works because the protagonist, the center, the main person in that film, because Marty is such an arrogant prick. And the point that I make about Marty Supreme is the movie works because he's an arrogant prick, because he's this uber confident guy. Because of that, it's an intriguing movie because when I look at this movie, Marty Supreme, the reason why that movie works, and I think works well, one, the technical aspects. I think Jack Fisk, who's worked on other films, was doing production design on this. The look of this movie is terrific. The lighting, everything. This isn't really a sports movie. Yes, it's about table tennis, ping pong, and a ping pong player, but it's more of a character study. And would I say that Marty is a likable character? No, he's an unlikable character. That's why the film works. That's why the film works. It's an impressive period piece. I mean, when I look at that in Nilo, you look at the Safdie brothers and their work on this movie. I think this is probably one of the strongest films they've done, probably. People talk about uncut gems, but this is a really, really interesting period piece. It feels like a short story at times to me. And again, the point I make about this movie is if Marty were simply this nice, placid guy, I don't think this movie would work. So again, a warning I have for people, like it would be for One Battle After Another, which like, if you don't like unlikable characters, essentially unlikable major characters or protagonists, don't watch this movie.
Now, another one that I know has gotten a lot of buzz that I need to watch, and I plan on doing it very soon, is Bugonia.
Well, that's based on a movie that I saw years ago called Save the Green Planet.
Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah, that's a great film. Bugonia, I'm not really interested in. There are very good performances there. Emma Stone's very good, and I think Jesse Plemons is very good. He got shafted with the Oscars, as did Paul Mescal from Hamnet and Chase Infinity from One Battle After Another. And I'm like, look, I like the acting nominations generally this year, but I'm sorry. Some of these omissions are just ridiculous. And again, I don't like getting into what should have been nominated and what doesn't, because I'm not terribly interested in that, other than if I think the best films and the most noteworthy films get nominations, then I'm satisfied. So generally, I'm satisfied this year. But yeah, some of these nominations, I'm like.
That may be a lead into another one, which is F1, the movie with Brad Pitt.
It's funny that got a nomination, but I actually like F1. It's not a bad film. It's a pretty good film. It's a typical, what you would call popcorn film. I like the look of this movie. I don't mind racing films. I like the look of this movie. I just, not just the camera in the cars and showing it from that point of view, vantage point. The cinematography has a kind of clean, crisp look to it. And I liked Brad Pitt's character in it. You know, like when he doesn't want to touch the trophy. When I think early on when he's, I think at 24 hours of Daytona, and he coming over his team that he was part of won the race, and he come over with the trophy. He's like, I'm not touching that. I just want the money, because he's living in a van. I'm giving away too much, but F1 works. I mean, I think it's a prototypical drama, prototypical popcorn drama, but it works. Do I think it's one of the best films of the year? No. But it works. It's pretty good film.
Yeah, I think we've covered all the best picture nominees then. I guess Train Dreams, and you mentioned Sentimental Value briefly.
I saw Train Dreams. It's beautifully photographed. And a very poetic, it's a really more like a poetic film. Guy who's a logger and is kind of spanned through time, through the years. I give the Oscars credit for recognizing this movie. I really do. Because this is the kind of film that would probably get lost, that probably wouldn't get normally, like in the past, would probably be ignored by the Oscars. But it got, I think, about 4 nominations. It got a few nominations. It's a beautifully shot film. It's a nicely acted film, nicely acted feature. It's a gorgeous film to look at. I hate emphasizing that, but it's like Frankenstein. You have to go with what works with the movie. The visuals with Frankenstein are outstanding, and here the photography here, and I think that Joel Edgerton, his character, the person he plays, he's really good in this film. I don't think it'll win awards, unfortunately, but I'm glad that they recognized it. I'm glad this got at least a couple nominations.
And the other one was Sentimental Value. I think that's the last best
Which
pick.
I mentioned, and I'm glad that that got a number of nominations. Again, that's another film I'm very glad got a lot of acting nominations.
It sounds like you feel like the award season this year for the Oscars, at least, was pretty. I mean, they're recognizing films that, actually do deserve the honor of at least recognition.
Yeah, I think they've been doing that for the past number of years. So again,
is there a point where you think they really started doing that in a way that you like, or?
When I think when Parasite won the Oscars, that was an indication to me, and won Best Picture. That was an indication to me that they were willing to recognize outstanding cinema and outstanding films outside of the Hollywood orbit in a way they hadn't. And so that was an indicator of that. But over the years, I've looked at certain films and they've gotten a number of nominations, like, oh, that's great, that's good. And so even this year, it's a very different Oscars. And I guess maybe some people don't like that. They really think that some Avengers movie or Fantastic Four movie was the best film of the year. No.
If only people saw the face you were making right now in the audio version of this.
I don't think so. That's right. They still don't. They can only hear me. They can't see unless this goes to YouTube visually. But yeah. Oh no. Like, look, as a former comic book collector, it's not that I don't like superhero movies. It's that very few of them are outstanding enough where I would give them awards. And, Christopher Nolan's films, yeah, I would. Dark Knight, those films, yeah. But most superhero movies are not approaching art. Not that the Oscars are purely about art, as I mentioned before, but they're
big. They're spectacles for entertainment. You take your family to the movies. You go see Fantastic Four.
Right.
The roller coaster rides.
They're spectacles for people who wear spectacles.
You're being a lot meaner about it than I am.
Again, you gotta understand, I'm somebody who's gone to Comic Cons, and I'm a former comic book collector and I'm a comic book reader. So I'm not somebody who doesn't like comic books or who didn't read comic books. I probably have a lot higher standards for comic books. But I've got to a point where I'm like, okay, there have been enough superhero movies. I think we need to move on. I really do. I think it's enough.
I think that's all that can be said. I think a lot of people feel the same way.
Yeah. And I like DC and Marvel. Even in my 50s, I like it. I don't collect. I know people my age that collect comics. I can't do that because, I'm an old guy and I don't deal with comic books. You have to grow up. I grew up a long time ago. So as much as I liked them, I had to give them up when I was like 15. But
I'll admit I still get my there's a
okay.
few monthly comics I still get.
Okay. I mean, I remember watching, was it The Big Bang Theory, and seeing them at the comic book store, and I felt a little sad, like, oh, I don't do that anymore. And but I'm like,
I haven't given up on my monthly. I go to the comic book store to get my monthly copy of
yeah,
Vampirella.
you're what? Are you still in your 20s?
I'm in my 30s.
Oh, you're in 30s. Okay, you're still a little young. So by the time you get to your 40s or so forth, that's a different story. This isn't going to go over with the comic book crowd. Oh, they're not going to like this. I get boycotts. No, I won't.
Quick, change the topic. Change the topic.
Yeah, let's change the topic. Let's change the topic.
Well, I did want to talk about how you view. Well, you mentioned you're looking into Roger and Ebert and how they dealt with the Oscars in the past. Did you want to talk about that? Because I didn't know where you wanted to go with that. What's your...
I'm glad you brought that up, because I've been looking at, to get ready for the tour, I was looking at the old episodes they did of we picked the Oscars and we picked the winners. And because I hadn't seen those in a long time, many, many years. And I looked at it and I went, I like the back and forth, not necessarily the wisecracks and the insults, but I like their take on the films and the performances. Is intelligent, smart, effective dissections done in a simple process, in a simplistic way, so that audiences will understand. But I like the way that they broke down the performances, the way they talked about the films in those Oscar shows. And that's what I really enjoyed. I'm like, this is pretty good. I mean, I was kind of surprised. They had some of these at the Disney MGM resort, I think it is. I haven't been there in a long time, but the Disney MGM studios, I think. I don't know if it's still called that, but at Disney World. But, it used to be in their studios, and then they went to Disney MGM studios, and they had an audience. There's like an audience there. It was like, I don't want to say it was lavish, but it was relatively lavish later on compared to, what it used to be. So those episodes are fascinating to me. And like I said, I may do if I chose the Oscar show for my podcast, Final Cut. So I just don't know when I'm going to do it. Maybe next month. We'll see. Not quite sure.
Now, what are your personal picks for the Oscars?
Oh, well, well, I can't give those away because I may be doing the show.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Keep my listeners in suspense.
Right. If I do the show, that's when you'll hear my awards if I picked it. And so I don't handicap the Oscars. I can give you an idea of what I think will win and what won't. That's what you want. But I can't give you my awards.
Well, okay, let's go with the latter half then. What do you think will win?
Yeah, that's fine. I don't think Sinners will win Best Picture. I really don't. I think, again, I don't think, even though it's critically acclaimed and it did well financially, I don't think Sinners is really appreciated. I really don't think it is. I think it's going to be appreciated years from now. One Battle After Another is another one. It's done very well with critics, has not done well financially. I don't think it's going to be appreciated until years from now. Those are two movies I'm looking at. I'm going, yeah, they're going to be looked at and studied. They're going to be definitely appreciated. Even if they win Oscars, it's not going to. So in terms of what might win Best Picture, One Battle After Another is a very good choice. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, if I had to say what the betting money's on, and I'm sure there are people who do bet on the Oscars. At least I've heard that that's the case. I don't know if it's the case. Probably One Battle After Another. Probably win Best Picture. That's what I'm thinking. I think though it's going to be a time when they finally kind of award Paul Thomas Anderson. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay. You know, I just looked it up. I did not realize The Secret Agent is the last film of one of my favorite sort of character actors. Udo Kier is apparently in it.
Oh, right.
And that's
Yes.
wild that his because he's done so many. I mean, he did art house movies, he did trashy European exploitation movies, he's done Hollywood movies, and he ends with like this Oscar buzz movie, which is
Right.
fascinating to me.
I think it's appropriate.
Yeah,
I think it's
yeah.
appropriate.
Well, especially with someone that has had that long of a career. So I'm actually
Mhm.
happy that this film is getting Oscar buzz because of that.
Well, so am I because I think it's the best movie of the year. I think The Secret Agent is the best movie of the year.
Okay, so you
Uh,
gave away that one at least. You think
oh yeah,
that's your
oh
pick?
yeah. I
Okay.
think that is. And one battle after another is up there for me. But The Secret Agent to me is, I think, best movie of the year. Again, I like the Oscars this year. I'll just come out and say it. I'm very satisfied with the Oscars. But again, there's some nominations. I think some people got snubbed. I didn't understand. I didn't get. But I'm not
Other
supposed to
than
get it anyway.
the Park Chan movie, what do you?
March
Is there any
yeah.
other snubs?
Well, Paul Mescal not getting a nomination for Hamnet, Chase Infinity for one battle after another. I don't know why they didn't get nominations. And there was another one I mentioned in terms of nominees, but those primarily, but I don't like getting into the what should have been nominated, what could have been nominated game because again, I look at the Oscars too pragmatically. For me, it's not about should art win or does art win or should commercial films or films steeped in commerce win. I don't get into those
Well,
arguments
this is
because they're
actually a good
immaterial.
segue because I wanted to ask you about the future of the Oscars because starting in, I believe, 2029, the Oscars will not be on ABC anymore. They'll be on YouTube. What do you make of the
Interesting.
future of the Oscars?
As a televised award,
Well, just as the sort of this big event in our culture.
well, the Oscars are more of an award ceremony than they are spectacle, as you noted, and a show. It's a show, but the show is about awards, and the show is dealing with awards. And I'm not surprised that it's going to YouTube because, the online, that's really the future for a lot of cultural institutions or major institutions. If you look at NFL, and people may not, maybe think this is strange of me to say, but it's the truth. I have been analyzing the NFL this past year on a sports show based in California. I'm not in California, but the show is. So I've been doing NFL analysis. And the NFL is moving into streaming services and platforms. They're having some of their playoffs go on streaming services and not the networks. I think the future is moving into solely online, solely streaming, or solely internet platforms. So when you look at something like YouTube, YouTube's perfect for the Oscars.
Also, just the global nature of it. If you're
Right.
trying, if you're honoring films that are more international in scope now, having it only on ABC, yeah.
Well, if I were the Oscars, I hadn't heard this about the Oscars that they were going to YouTube. But I don't know if they have a streaming partner as well. I think they'd be advised to also have a streaming partner So I would say stream on a streamer and the YouTube if they can work that out. I don't know if they'll be able to do that, but I'm fine with them being on YouTube. That works for me. And I'm not somebody who's always watched the Oscars in recent years, but I think it's a perfectly good move.
Anything else you want to touch on before we close out, or did we cover all the ground?
Well, yeah, I think it's been interesting. My tour just started. This is actually part of a media tour that I'm doing in regards to awards season. So it's a first for me. I've never really been interviewed about the Oscars and awards, and I'm finding it really refreshing and enjoyable. Because this is something that normally when I was a reviewer, people would come to me and say, well, what do you think is going to win this award? And what do you think is going to win that award? And what's going to happen here? Because I used to be part of a film discussion group at a Borders in my hometown here. I don't know if people remember Borders bookstore, but it used to be a film discussion group. And so people would sometimes, around Oscar time, they would ask me about what I think win and all of that. And so this is a first for me to do an award season tour. And thus far, even though it just started yesterday, doing a podcast, I'm enjoying it thus far. I'm not somebody who is terribly interested in discussing like in recent years. I wasn't terribly interested in the Oscars, but I've come back to what I call trend tracking and, trend spotting in regards to films and ultimately awards. And I've sort of gotten into the swing of it, and I kind of find it kind of interesting to talk about. I haven't really talked too much about the scandals of awards yet. Maybe there's some platform that is interested in that. I've kind of just sort of kept it on a pragmatic industry level and kind of discussed what's happening with the awards and all of that. Well, I will say this. I've never been to an awards ceremony, but I did go to an event where I saw the Oscars. Normally, I watch the Oscars at home. So you would watch it. I guess nowadays you watch it on your phone, you watch it on a laptop, your PC, or your TV. I would normally watch it at home, always had. And then one year I was invited to the local film festival that I covered. They have an Oscar event. In fact, well, I was going to show you you can't see it on, obviously it's audio, so they won't be able to see it. Sorry.
What's that? What are you looking for?
I'm looking at all my old press passes and everything.
Oh, okay.
So JG will be able to see this. This is Oscars across America.
Oh, that's amazing.
So So I went to a Oscars event. This was a fundraiser for local film festival I used to cover. And so I dressed up, because you have to wear, it didn't have to be tuxedo, but I think you had to wear a tie. So you had to wear formal wear. And I just happened to be I was working for a friend of mine who had an ethnic newspaper, which was nice. So freelancer, you get to work wherever you can get it. So something was wrong with my computer. I was actually working at her house and writing up story. And so I had to, I remember that Sunday, she was going too. So she had to go take me back to my place. And I had to go change, and then she came back to pick me up, and we went to the awards. And I thought I wouldn't like it. I'm like, I get dressed up. I don't really like wearing formal wear. And I'm so glad that I'm retired, where I don't have to wear a tie. I don't have to wear a jacket. I don't have to wear any of those things, or even a long sleeve shirt all the time. I don't mind a long sleeve shirt, but I hate formal wear. Well, I don't hate it. I don't mind dressing up on occasion, but just rare occasion. So, I'm wearing what I call my gray jacket. You know, I guess I had a black tie or borrowed one, I don't know, and slacks and all that. And I thought I wouldn't like it because I'm like, okay, I'm at this tiny restaurant. You know, I had a bunch of us packed into this restaurant. And, you know, because I live in Hawaii and I've lived in Hawaii for a little while, we got the feed in the afternoon. This was before it went live in Hawaii. So now the Oscars are live in Hawaii. It has been for the past, I don't know how many years. But back then, the only way you could see it was at that event. So you got the local feed from the local ABC station in LA, which I used to live in LA and I haven't seen that station in years. So we're in this restaurant. There are numerous TVs around because everybody's looking at it. And I ended up having a very good time. I think the dinner was okay, but it was the only time that I watched the Oscars formally. And I enjoyed it. I was surprised. I had a good time. I thought, oh, it's going to be loud and all these people around. I'm not going to like this. And it ended up being very enjoyable. I had a good time. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Do I want to do that every year? No. And I'll leave on this note, or maybe not leave, but I'll add this. The closest that I've come to a ceremony and sitting through a ceremony, one year they were telecasting the Emmys, not the Oscars, the Emmys, in various cities across, live, you know, in theaters. So in my hometown, they were having it at a theater downtown. And I think it was free, so you get free tickets or whatever. But you had to kind of dress up. I didn't wear a tie, but I did wear my gray jacket. I guess I don't have too many jackets. I don't own a suit. I guess it tells you something about me. I don't own a suit. I have a couple of jackets, but I don't own a suit. And so I was at this, you know, modest-sized theater downtown, and you know they had a local host and a couple local hosts, and they were showing it up on a screen. I don't know how the people who sit through those awards do it. It's hard. I mean, I'm just watching the telecast at a theater, you know, in my formal wear, 3 hours or more. Whew. That I was just exhausted. And I'm just sitting down, right? That's what you got to understand. I tip my hat. I'm not wearing a hat right now. Of course, nobody nobody can see me because this is a podcast. I'm seeing JG and JG seeing me, but I would do an expression of tipping the hat. I tip my hat at movie stars and actors and actresses and filmmakers who sit through award shows. It's hard. And I only have that one kind of experience. I was like spent afterwards. And all I was doing was sitting down in a seat and watching. But it was like a hard, you know, hard back chair and in the theater. Those award shows are killer. So to everyone who's going to be going to the Oscars this year, all the nominated actors and all the nominated directors and writers and cinematographers and art designers and editors and everyone going, I salute you because I know how hard it is to sit in a theater watching an award. Not, you know, I'm watching it televised, but I have a facsimile. So I salute them. Absolutely. I would not recommend that to a lot of people. Unless you're nominated for an award. Then you should.
I was going to say something that may sound odd to you. You know, my favorite part of watching the Oscars, or at least the pre-Oscars stuff, is actually seeing all the old Oscar winners show up out of nowhere. You know, like sometimes you'll see Gary Busey or George Kennedy often shows up.
Yeah, I like those when they have the anniversaries. I like those just fine, with the exception, of course, of the infamous Alan Carr produced show that featured Rob Lowe. Didn't like that. Nothing against Rob Lowe, but I used to not like Rob Lowe, but I have nothing against him now. But yeah, I didn't like that. Sorry. Why am I saying sorry? It sucked. What am I telling you? This is horrible. Screw that opening number. It was horrible. Go ahead.
We'll close out on that. How can my listeners keep up with your work?
Oh, yeah, they're going to love that. I just hope Rob Lowe isn't listening to this.
I was asking, how can my listeners keep up with your work?
Oh, great. They can keep up check out my podcast. I have an episode 21 already out called The Year of Filming Dangerously. It's Final Cut Podcast, and you can find that at allanier.substack.com. I would also recommend for my newsletters, Final Cut and Retro Review, go to Facebook. If you're on Facebook, go check out my page, because I have a promotional page there for my newsletters. It's called Final Cut and Retro Review Publications. That's the name of it. It's on Facebook. The name of it, Final Cut and Retro Review Publications. You'll see promos. You'll see interviews that I'm doing. I'll probably have this interview up on that page at some point. All kinds of promotional stuff and all kinds of stuff about my two newsletters. So go to the Final Cut and Retro Review Publications page on Facebook. Follow, subscribe, like, whatever.
A special thanks to my $10 and above tier supporters on Patreon, who make this show possible with their generous donations. Producers' credits shout out to those supporters: Aaron, Jeremy, Matt, Big Bob's Beepers, James, Enoch, David, Sadad, Tristan, Bob, Eva, Miriam, West Bank Robbery Pod, B. Lund, Transnatural Perspectives Podcast, Dan, Nick, Elliot, Fabian, Tom, Arlen, Bo, Spartacus, James, G, Jamie, Will, JC, WV, Sutra, Orc, Catherine, Darko, Nathan, Holland, Dan, Mark, Chase, Olm, Gary, Emilia, Nick, Brace, Michael, and Brian. Please join those listeners in supporting me at the $10 and above tier of my Patreon page, patreon.com/Parallax Views, if you'd like your very own producer's credit on each and every edition of the program. Until next time, you've been listening to Parallax Views with Parallax Views to Parallax Views with Parallax Views.
The way out is not simply to say, don't do it, just to prohibit. It's nothing else. If we don't do it, others will be doing it like crazy. So, we have to confront the problem. But no, basically, I know of the great anxieties, problems, new forms of control, but it's also new forms of freedom. This is why I always emphasize that internet and all this new digital stuff, it's a very ambiguous phenomenon, but it's the field of struggle. New forms of enslavement, but at the same time, new incredible forms of freedom. We have to accept the fight with no nostalgia for old, allegedly more authentic communities or whatever. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid.